What's going on, digital Wildcatters? Welcome to another week of the Oil and Gas Startups Podcast. We got my man, Hudson Hollister, CEO of HData, in today. He's from Chicago. So, we have some kind of cold and gloomy weather here in Houston, but you're probably looking at it and you're like, this is nice, beautiful.
I abandoned my overcoat this morning because it's balmy here in Houston.
Yeah. So, Hudson, tell us real quick about, high level, 40,000 foot view. What is HData?
HData is setting out to digitize everything to do with energy regulation. Some of those who are listening probably are familiar with the forms that midstream oil and interstate gas pipelines have to file. It's all manual processes. We're getting rid of all the manual processes and we're automating all the things people have to do with those forms. And it turns out, once you do that, regulatory work isn't just about complying with government rules anymore. It also can be a source of intelligence and value. And that sounds awfully buzzwordy. I can break it down to a story.
Yeah. Let's kind of open this up a bit, because at our Fuse conference, two of our keynote speakers that we had on stage at the same time were Toby Rice, who's the CEO of EQT, the largest nat gas producer in the United States, and then Michael Skelly, who, when we did the Fuse conference, I was asking, hey, who do we get to talk about building renewable assets? Everyone's like, Mike Skelly. And Toby had made a comment. He's like, yeah, you think it's hard to get a pipeline built in this country? He's like, try building a transmission line. And everyone started laughing at that. So
it's one of those audiences that would laugh at that kind of a joke. It's the right kind of wonker. You would assemble the right crowd.
It's a very niche joke, but it hit with that audience. And so,
in conversations all the time where like somebody brings up interconnection queues and it's a joke, or somebody talks about gas pipeline reversals, which I've learned is a thing. And there is a crowd that finds jokes in something as wonky as that.
There's a lot of nerds like us running around. You just have to find where we congregate, right? And so with HData, first, let's talk about your background. Before HData, give us a little bit of history on yourself and up to this point.
I started my career as a regulatory lawyer, and that brought me to a place of furious rage. I went to work for the Securities and Exchange Commission during the 2008 financial crisis, and my job was to figure out what my agency was doing with all of the forms that it got from companies. You might know that the SEC is the agency famous for missing Bernie Madoff and not catching his fraud.
Yeah.
The agency that's noteworthy for not noticing that Enron had off-balance sheet entities. The agency that fails to properly, or have failed in those times, to properly enforce the laws that are supposed to protect investors.
Yeah. You look at what's going on with FTX and the crypto sphere right now too. They have a track record of missing some pretty big things, right?
And it's full of good people.
Yeah.
But the trouble is that the way that the agency was regulating hadn't gotten updated. And when I was a lawyer there, I discovered that we were collecting all these filings from public companies. They've got to give us their financial statements. And the lawyers and accountants in the SEC, I realized, were printing out those forms from the public companies and double checking the math of the finances with a pencil and a calculator, and manually trying to find the next Enron. I was part of a task force that tried to fix that, and we recommended that the SEC should digitize all that.
Yeah.
The SEC should take all the forms that are filed by public companies, the 10K and the 10Q, maybe some of the audience looks at public company finances sometimes, and should digitize them and make every number into its own data field, because that would mean we could apply analytics to find the patterns that will reveal the next fraud.
Yeah.
The SEC did not do that. I resigned from the SEC. I walked up Capitol Hill with my resume. I walked into offices of members of Congress and I said, please hire me so I can torment the SEC for not being modern. And one of them did. 2 hours after I did that, I don't know how to get a job on Capitol Hill, because for me, it worked out this way. 2 hours after I did that, I got a call from the office of Congressman Darrell Issa from California. Congressman Issa hired me, and I spent a couple of years trying to pass laws to force my former colleagues at the SEC to stop using document-based forms for all the hundreds of different things that public companies have to file, and to start using data instead.
Yeah.
We got a bill got a bill introduced, didn't get it passed, and so I resigned again. I started a group in DC to try to convince regulatory agencies that they should do this full scale, that every regulatory agency, whatever kind of information it collects from business, ought to use data and not documents. And that's where we get to the regulated energy industry. In 2015, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is in charge of regulating parts of the energy industry, especially midstream oil pipelines, interstate gas pipelines, but not the upstream and not the intrastate. So it's chunks of what we all work on.
Yeah.
It's not the whole picture. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission got interested in doing this. And began in 2015 to go through a process of taking all the complex forms. I'm going to tell you the story about how they used to get filed, because it's funny.
Do it, please.
All the complex forms and turn them into data, and that started then, and that brought us to what HData is now, which I can talk about in a minute. But I am hoping that some folks who listen to the podcast are energy accountants, and it's quite likely there are some, because they will have some residue of pain from the way that the FERC used to collect these things. So these are documents. You put in your finances if you're a pipeline. It's a special kind of accounting, of course. It's different from other accounting, so you have to get specially trained on it. And until October 2021, the FERC required every pipeline to bootleg a copy of Microsoft Visual Fox Pro, which Microsoft doesn't support anymore. Like this software that it has no support. You had to download an illegal copy, I guess illegal-ish copy of it.
Yeah.
You had to get the special Microsoft Visual Fox Pro that Microsoft won't sell you, and you had to install that on your local desktop. Nothing is cloud. And you had to take your spreadsheet where everything lives and manually type every number of the thousands of numbers into the Microsoft Visual Fox Pro, and then you had to hit a button. You had to review it manually, and then it had to go upward to the FERC. And when it went to the FERC, you'd think that when the FERC was getting it in software, they would then be able to apply, analytics to it. No, they did not. They would smash it down into a PDF document and put stamps on it and stuff. And then if you wanted to go look at your form that you had filed to see to confirm you had filed it, or to do comparisons with other pipelines, you could download the PDFs and manually hunt again. Yeah. That's how it worked. It used to work. The FERC knew they had to. It's
pretty funny that they go through all the, you'd have to jump through all these hoops to digitize it. It gets to FERC, and then they compress it back down to a PDF. Yeah.
Yes. That's how it was when I started working with some folks that are dear friends now at the FERC. And I was running this nonprofit group that was just trying to get every agency to do this. And to their great credit, the FERC was one of the first agencies in the federal government, maybe third overall, and the first one that wasn't a financial agency, to start trying to figure this out, how to modernize regulation. And I warn you, I'm going to go into more wonkery.
I like hearing the wonkery.
Yeah.
This is a world that I don't get to play around in much, and so thankfully, so I love hearing about the inefficiencies.
The FERC set up the structure that works so well. It makes every number in those forms that the pipelines have to file into its own data field, and that ripples across the whole industry in beautiful ways. It makes it possible to automatically produce the form, like TurboTax. Makes it possible to automatically analyze it, like you could with Bloomberg or something. And makes it possible to combine those things. Yeah. So the FERC decided to do this. I was running the trade association. I started trying to convince people in the energy startup world that, hey, this is an opportunity. You could build the TurboTax of FERC.
Yeah.
I looked around the startup world, nobody did. I tried to convince some VCs to initiate it themselves. Nobody did. And I remember the moment, August 2020, during the pandemic, I was volunteering at a beer festival.
They're all good ideas.
A beer festival inside of a prison yard. It's actually, if you've seen the Blues Brothers, it's the prison that was filmed in.
Oh, really?
I was volunteering at a beer festival.
This at?
It's in Joliet, Illinois, my hometown outside Chicago. We actually brought the original Blues Brothers back to that same festival a couple years later. It's one of our finest moments. I was at the Blues Brothers Prison Yard Beer Festival. I remember looking up at the sky and thinking about this problem. Like, I know this is going to come. I know that the FERC is making this change. It's going to allow the incredible digitization of the energy industry. Now, at this point, I didn't know anything about energy, so I wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
But I tried to persuade other folks to do it. I remember looking up at the sky and suddenly realizing, wait, I should try this. I should do this.
Yeah.
I've started an organization before. I haven't done a startup, but I know what the digital part of it's going to be like. So let's try it. Let's try to learn energy and see if there is a way to make life easier for the people that are groaning under the weight of energy regulation.
Yeah.
So August 2020 is when it began.
So that's awesome. One, love that you found the motivation and inspiration at a beer festival. there's some meta level inspiration.
Yeah, you found that the beer festival vibe facilitates
It
creativity
does 100%.
in a way that maybe even like a high class wine festival might not.
Yeah,
I guess you've already
there's-
made it if you're doing a wine festival.
Yeah, you're probably not thinking about things. You're just enjoying life at that point,
Have,
right?
have y'all considered a mead festival?
I haven't considered a mead festival. So this is super interesting, talking about the transformation of FERC and the way that they're processing their data. And the way that you saw it was essentially, they're building kind of like layer zero for the data. And now, hey, we can start building an application on top of that, the TurboTax of regulatory.
Yeah, layer zero is the right
accounting.
way to put it. And I'll bet some of those who listen to this podcast have dealt with this in other fashions. If you're working on tech in energy or in any field, it's really important for the data to live outside of the systems.
Mhm.
If the data can be properly defined, like with a taxonomy or a structure of some kind, then the systems, the data is independently defined in that way. The systems can just refer to it and automatically change
Yeah.
whenever the data changes. And this is what the FERC did. They adopted what's called a taxonomy. It's like just a thing that specifies what all the line items of all the forms are.
Yeah.
And that means they can change the taxonomy, and all of the systems that cover energy accounting and energy regulatory reports, they just change automatically.
Yeah.
We have a reporting tool now that if the FERC adds a line item to its form, which they do sometimes, no problem. Our compliance tool just automatically bloop pops the stuff in.
Yeah. So you start HData. You started it in 2020.
Started in August 2020.
Okay.
Or
cool.
I was already doing a consulting firm. It was already called HData.
Yeah.
I have this conversation that recurs every so often with investors. Why is it called HData? I named it after myself, but it was when it was a consulting firm.
Yeah.
And so now it feels kind of egotistical, and so I try to pretend that the H stands for helping.
There you go. You can make it the
Very
H can,
helpful data.
the H can stand for whatever you want it to stand for.
Exactly.
No, I love that story. So let's talk about what HData actually does. It sounds like you can help in regulatory with pipelines, with utilities, things of that nature. So first, let's talk about the verticals that y'all actually cover when it comes to regulatory, and realize that you're talking to someone that doesn't come from the regulatory world. So break it down in that sense, and then let's talk about like what the tool can actually do.
Yeah, think about in the pipeline world. So we're talking about midstream pipelines, midstream oil, interstate gas. You usually have financial management, the folks that are in charge of tracking expenses and tracking operations and figuring out where the capital expenditure are going to go, the finance office. Since this is a regulated business, there's a gigantic regulatory vertical in most of these companies as well. It's the people that are in charge of making sure that we're complying with all the regulations, and that if we're operating under government rules of some kind, if we're operating under a tariff for a particular pipe, we are complying with the rules of that, and we're proposing extensions to that, and we're maintaining a good relationship with our regulator.
Mm-hmm.
And then third, there's usually somebody in charge of making sure we make money. Of somebody in charge of business development, trying to go after the shippers to convince more people to move their stuff through our pipe.
Yeah.
All three of those can make use of this regulatory information in interesting ways. I guess first, in the case of finance, they've also got to file it, so they have to create the form and submit it to the government. But then beyond that, there is incredible intelligence that's available in these forms that has been an untapped resource up until now.
Yeah.
Intelligence on yourself, intelligence on your peers and competitors. And I have fun examples of that, how we're only just scratching the surface.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that sounds like what you really get passionate about is like the analytics. Once you have this data, what insight can you gather from that? And so seems like that's probably a heavy focus for HData. And so let's talk about, what kind of insight can you gain from this information?
I've got many examples. I'll take one from today. I was meeting with the business lead for a gas pipeline, and this person was telling me that they track all their contracts that they've got with their shippers, of course, for their pipeline, and they know when they're going to expire and when they have to be renewed and stuff. And they also know if they've got extra capacity. They know what shippers they want to go after for business development, and they kind of know. Just because everyone talks to everyone, they know where those shippers are currently.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really have it systematic. there's a form that every pipeline files with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. It's called the 549B, 549 Bravo. There's a form where you got to list all your current contracts. And it was this impenetrable PDF. We discovered in a partnership that we've recently announced with Boardwalk Pipelines, a joint development initiative that we recently announced with Boardwalk Pipelines, we discovered that the information in that form could be scraped. And so we scraped it. And we were able to connect it with the information in the core annual forms that we also deal with.
Mhm.
And so this means that for the first time in history, we put all of these contracts, which are publicly available but impenetrable information,
Yeah.
onto a dashboard, allowing anybody to see for the whole industry. Here are the ones that are about to expire. Here are the ones that my pipeline has. Here are the ones that everybody else's pipeline has. Here are the shippers. Here are the most prolific shippers. Here are the ones that are contracting with multiple pipelines. Every node in that web of relationships and contracting is now revealed.
Yeah.
And so the person we were talking to today got excited that instead of having to live inside their brain, we could deliver this digitally
Yeah.
everywhere to everybody.
I mean, it's very similar. You're familiar with Drilling Info and
Yeah.
Averse. I mean, they did this back in the day for upstream regulatory filings. You know, you could go find the data publicly, but you got to go through the Texas Railroad Commission or the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. And it's super fucking painful to
Exactly
use
right.
their websites. And they have websites now. They didn't have websites back then. And you can find the information, but it's just very burdensome. And so Drilling Info essentially made this intelligence platform that would scrape all that data and clean it up. And then you could start running analytics on top of that.
Yeah. So for those that are familiar with the changes that the availability of those tools in the upstream industry brought about, I think what we're trying to do in midstream and interstate gas is quite similar.
Yeah.
One enormous bet, though, that we decided to make, the story of our company was we ended up raising a tiny bit of capital, cobbling together an initial tool, getting a couple of customer contracts, and then we got into the Techstars Alabama Energy Tech Accelerator, sponsored
Nice.
by Southern Company, which is in Birmingham, Alabama, which is a place that I now love.
Yeah.
And that helped us to raise our initial $3.1 million seed round in December 2021.
Awesome.
Right after we did that, and that's why I'm getting to the seed round, is that we had to make an enormous bet.
Yeah.
We had to decide if we were gonna try to be the TurboTax of regulated pipelines, or if we were gonna try to be the Bloomberg or Averse
Yeah.
of regulated pipelines, and we decided to try to do both.
Yeah.
Our platform both files the stuff and also analyzes it. And we did that for a specific reason. That hasn't happened yet, but we realized that if we can handle both the filing and the analysis, then we can end up being a platform between the pipelines and the regulators,
Mhm.
and we can invite our customers. It means we can offer the filing part much cheaper, because we can. Once something gets filed on our platform, then we have access to it, and it
Yeah.
can go into our database as long as it's public and we have permission to do it.
Yeah.
And we protect the stuff that's
Yeah.
that's confidential.
Yeah.
So enormous bet. It's the most expensive contract I've ever signed
Yeah.
to develop reporting alongside of the analysis.
Yeah.
And we have all these cool ideas, has never been done in energy or anywhere else, any other industry, of combining the job of filing the form with also analyzing it.
Yeah. No, I love that you brought up, Bloomberg Terminal as well. There's a lot of you have a lot of other successful startups like, was it Koifin, I think, that, they scrape like public filings from companies and aggregate that data, but it's all financial related stuff. And, for y'all, it sounds like one, making the big bet and attacking both of those. I'm sure there's a lot of challenges in trying to build those out.
There's challenges in both.
simultaneously.
You can mess
Yeah.
up both.
Yeah,
and we
for
could
sure.
mess up, and we've definitely messed up many things along the
But no,
way.
dude, I love, man, we've taken some huge fucking bets at Digital Wildcatters. I'm like, hey, this doesn't work. It kills the company. And we just go try to execute to the best of our ability. So
Do you
I
ever
like
find that
like,
when you're making decisions as the head of the company, that every choice you make feels like it could kill you?
yeah, it does. Like that's part of building a startup. And you, I don't know, if you don't have confidence in yourself to go execute those things, then, what are you doing in
That's
this
true.
position, right? So, I mean, when you start a startup, you're looking to build something big, and I think that you swing for the fences. And so I actually I like that you guys are doing that. What I also like about it is that, if you build out you're building out the reporting piece and
Mhm.
you're building out the data and analytics piece. Building out that reporting piece, like you're saying, is that you have access to all of this information. Obviously, you're not going to disclose anything that's proprietary, but it gives you direct access to clean and first party data. And so I like that. And I mean, no one's built it, and so might as well be all right.
We think it's possible, and we think we can make life easier and better for the accountants that work for regulated pipelines by enriching their filing experience with Intel.
Yeah.
When you're working on a particular number, we haven't done this yet.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of stepping on our product announcement.
Yeah.
But imagine looking at a number when you're working on it in your TurboTax and being able to automatically see the history of that from what you filed in the previous quarter or the previous year and 5 years or 11 years back.
Yeah.
That's what is possible if we enrich the filing experience.
I
know we're getting so wonky. Like this is subject matter that can be very boring.
No.
But it's transformation that can be very interesting.
Yeah.
Imagine
absolutely.
enriching the filing experience
Yeah,
with your whole
I
history.
don't find anything about regulatory to be necessarily exciting, but I find new solutions to be exciting. And so,
well, let's free people up. I talk to so
yeah.
many people who, it's funny. There's basically one in every company. There's a lady in this gas company. There's a gentleman that I've met at this consulting firm. There's usually one person who knows all about the regulatory forms.
Yeah.
And when management needs something answered about Intel, what's our competitors or peers doing, and it comes out of those regulatory forms, they always go to that person.
Yeah.
You find that one person and you realize they're brilliant. They know how to find patterns in regulatory forms, but almost all of their time is taken up with manually chugging through the numbers and transcribing.
They become a bottleneck, right?
Yeah. Or what happens sometimes, we've got two former chairs of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission on our board of advisors. We have the Obama one, John Wellinghoff, and the Trump one, Neil Chatterjee. Chairman Wellinghoff told us that when he was requesting analyses of his own forms at the agency, he would purposely hold back. He would hold back from his requests and not ask for all the analysis that he wanted because he knew it was taking up people's time. I think probably if you're at all empathetic in the oil and gas industry, not everybody is, but if you're an empathetic leader in an oil or gas company and you're asking for analysis, you hold off if you don't want to overburden your poor analysts.
Yeah.
Well, now suddenly we're going to turbocharge the analysts. We're going to liberate them from all this manual labor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that you look at, you're throttled, you're cutting back your bandwidth, right? Whether you're empathetic or not. I mean, people can only do so much work in any given day. And so you as an operator or management team can't get all the information that you need just because of restraints. And so that's huge. Like, I love solutions where it frees up time and bandwidth and increases efficiency. So it doesn't matter if that's in regulatory, if that's upstream oil and gas. So that's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
I think probably some of your portfolio companies or your participants are probably discovering this. I read economists, or mostly read Twitter feeds of economists, suggesting that a lot of the economic growth from the past half century or so is from improving efficiency, and we've wrung all the efficiency we can out of business.
Yeah.
Totally untrue.
No.
There's so many knowledge jobs that require typing a thing into a thing.
Yeah.
And here in regulation, we got a bunch of them.
Yeah.
We can get rid of all of those knowledge tasks and elevate the people, not fire them, but elevate them so they can use their brains and help management make better choices. And that means that I can draw a direct line from regulation to lifting people out of poverty. I can draw a direct line from fixing regulation to human flourishing. And I'll bet that's true of a lot of people who work on data-oriented startups in this energy industry.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty bold claim to think that we have maxed out on efficiency when you see technologies like OpenAI and ChatGPT and what that's going to enable.
I feel a little threatened by that, isn't it? Yeah. And I can kind of empathize now with the folks that sometimes folks feel threatened when we say we can automate these tasks.
Yeah.
And I feel a little threatened by ChatGPT.
Yeah. I mean, the way I see a lot of technologies, it enables humans to do more things faster. That's usually how it works out. And so it's even like on drilling rigs, like you go out to an offshore drilling rig, everything's automated, but you still have rig hands out there working everything. And so there's not a lot of cases where automation is just completely displaced humans.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned that you guys raised a $3 million seed round. You went through Techstars in Birmingham, which is really cool. I didn't know there was a Techstars in Birmingham.
I would encourage those that are working with an early stage company that might benefit from accelerator. I'll be frank. I was skeptical about accelerators until the fall of 2021. I saw a lot of accelerators.
Why were you skeptical.
I saw a lot of accelerators that didn't seem to necessarily add any extra value.
Yeah.
And I didn't see where the value would come from because I was on the outside of it.
Yeah.
I will tell you that being part of that accelerator for those 3 months changed my life permanently. I have never been part of it is, I mean, this is probably true for you too, Colin. I realized that my profession wasn't actually being a regulatory lawyer. It was being a founder.
Mm-hmm.
And I was around other people who weren't working on energy regulation. There was one person who was creating a new form of wind turbine, for instance. She's brilliant. I realized that I had so much in common with her and with my other fellow members of the cohort in our accelerator because we were all founders and we all had the same emotional hurdles to get over and the same confidence that we had to build. And that was way more powerful than if I had been with a bunch of other energy regulatory people.
Yeah.
That is just, you can't quantify that exactly.
Yeah.
But it is the most supported that I have ever felt in any professional experience.
Sometimes I feel like I live in a little bubble because I have so many founder friends.
Yeah.
And
including people who are doing things that are not anywhere near your subject matter. Right?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I have founder friends in all different aspects of tech. And, the one thing that's constant with founders is their level of optimism and energy. And so I'm always like surrounded by high energy, highly optimistic people.
How do you gin up optimism when things are dark? I saw the tweet that you have framed on the wall over in the digital Wildcatters
office.
office.
Like that?
Yeah. Maybe you can describe that tweet.
Well, so there's this tweet from this Twitter account that's Anon and hates me for whatever fucking reason. I don't know why. Man, he ran this
I wish I had a Twitter hater.
Yeah, I got a lot of them. I have a lot of them. He ran this poll. He's like, how much longer until Digital Wildcatters runs out of money? And I think he posted that like a year and a half ago. And so
what were the dates that were voted for?
So one
was a vote, right?
Yeah. So one was under a year, one was 1 to 2 years, and then it was like 3 years plus. And
so option A has been defeated.
Oh, I'm fucking destroying these people right now. And so I'm fueled by hate. So the more that people hate me, like the more powerful I become and the stronger I am. And so
I think Kelly Clarkson wrote a song about that.
Oh yeah. Kelly Clarkson's not the person I'd look to for inspiration on that, but I'll have to check that out.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah, there you go. And so, every once in a while, like in real life, I run into some people that, I'm just like, oh yeah, forget that. Not everyone's a founder, but going back to your point of like you realizing that you're a founder, you made a comment earlier where you talked about knowing that this product needed to be built, but you didn't come from energy. And I like that as well because I think a lot of,
I still do a lot of faking in conversations when acronyms are mentioned, I have to confess.
Okay, so
sorry to all the people that I talk to when I do business development.
So we have a pretty strict policy at Digital Wildcatters of no usage of acronyms because I think they're extremely inefficient for human communication.
Did I say FERC? I said FERC.
And that's fine. You said the real name many times. But the energy industry is the worst when it comes to acronyms. But, when I started roughnecking back when I was, 19 years old, I was like, my mission was I wanted to become the biggest oil man to come out of Texas. And I wanted to learn how to drill wells. I wanted to learn everything about production and completions because I wanted to start an oil company. And then finally realized it's like, hey, when you want to start a business, when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have to know everything about everything. You go build a great team and people that are specialists and that are badasses in their own right. And it's your job to be a leader and have vision of what can be built, but you don't have to understand every little thing. And so
it's your job to motivate people to take action. It's your job to push against, I think, especially in a startup, it's death to have inaction. It's better to make a wrong choice than to just sit there.
100%.
And sometimes it can be hard to, I don't ever know exactly the future or know the right answer.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying to take a stand when it could be the wrong one.
Yeah.
And yet you have to do that. You got to push your team to do that.
I always do find it interesting, though, when I run across founders that are attorneys in a former life, though, because just by nature, you're risk averse.
Yeah.
So was that any amount of challenge for you in your mindset towards building a startup, or were you just not kind of confined by the parameters of how attorneys usually think?
There's little bits of being an attorney that I still use. I mean, I read our contracts.
Yeah.
And we have lawyers, but I read our contracts, and I have patience enough to review them.
Dude, that's what I wish I had that skill set. I hate contracts. I'm just like, I don't want to deal with this.
I kind of like sitting with my customer contracts and it just feels so familiar. Or when I meet with our lawyers, I like it because I was that, and I have empathy for them from that. But I think more than that, what I am grateful for the legal part of my background is that I like words.
Yeah.
I really enjoy words, and I enjoy the different shadings of meaning you can come with in words, and enjoy trying to express yourself in different ways. I enjoy tossing a strange word into an otherwise commonplace sentence, and I enjoy that part.
Yeah,
and that you can really use if you're needing to communicate with different groups of people all the time.
Yeah, no, I love that. So for y'all's team, who is your team made up of? What type of people are you looking for at HData? Like who do you need to carry out that idea? Obviously, technologists that can build out software, but then are you building up a team that comes from the regulatory side, from utilities, from gas companies? What does that look like?
Our team does not come from energy. And that's actually really interesting. And I didn't really think about it until this moment when you asked. Most of our team comes from doing interesting things with data. And then we try to use empathy to talk to the energy industry. And of course, we now have a lot of advisors and customers who are in the industry. But it probably gets back to what you were talking about, the need to be willing to learn new things.
Mm-hmm.
My other half and co-founder, it is like a marriage, is Yuval Lubowicz. Yuval is my opposite. I can fly off the handle. Yuval's calm.
Yeah.
And we prop each other up. He's our co-founder and chief technology officer. And the two of us work on the business it's a pretty good division. It's the technical side of it, building the platform, inventing amazing new things for the platform on the one hand. And then it's getting out and selling it and trying to be an evangelist for it and working with the customers on the other side.
Yeah.
The choice of co-founder it's the most important hire that I've ever made, the most important choice I've ever made. It didn't have full information, but I guess if I were asked why or what governed when Yuval and I came together to co-found this company was that when I had my first few conversations with him, he asked all the tough questions. He knew what they were, having been a founder himself.
Yeah,
and he got me through all the worst things that could happen. And of course, I was trying to persuade him to come aboard, but he understood what those bad things were. And he had empathy and understanding for them, having been a founder, and wanted to dig into them alongside me. It was like we were working alongside together already, rather than in an interview situation.
Yeah, no, I love that. Especially, a lot of people always ask, how do you find a co-founder or find a technical co-founder? And I think like when you find the right person, like if you have good intuition and you kind of get that gut feeling. And
if you're not hiding things from them.
Yeah.
If you want to share with them even the worst parts, there's definitely, this is probably true for any founder that you've got in your community here at Digital Wildcatters. There are a lot of things where things that you're worried about, and you can't share those worries with anyone because you have to keep motivating them.
Yeah.
There's and things that they can't, all these terrible things that you got in your head that could happen in your business, they can't physically happen. They can't all happen. Some of them are mutually exclusive of each other.
Yeah.
But you've got them and you worry about them all the time, and you can't share that.
Yeah.
The co-founder is somebody with whom you could share, and you do share all of that. Yeah. As dark as it can get.
Well, I think
and if you got somebody,
I think transparency is the foundation of trust, right? And
if you've got somebody with whom you can do that, that's your co-founder.
Yeah. I love that. So how many people do you have on the team?
16 full-time.
16 full-time. Awesome. And you have lots of people in Birmingham.
We've got 5 in Birmingham. The rest are spread all over the country. The farthest away is in Scotland.
Cool. Oh, I got a Scottish on the team. I love it. So, for y'all, you're 2 years into this, going on third year. When did y'all get out of Techstars?
December 2021.
Okay, cool.
And we had this magnificent experience. Just sometimes things align. We were able to announce the closure of our round at the demo day where we graduated from Techstars.
That's a cool experience.
And we flew our investors who were signing the checks digitally that day, flew in, and we gathered everybody, and we all got in that stage. It was the most amazing, pumped up moment.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I bet that was a pretty cool moment for y'all.
We were excited for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we got stressed because now we have to do all the things that we said we could do. And that was December 2021. We had some amazing wins in 2022. We also had some really tough times. Yeah. Our investors know this. There were some months when we didn't sign a single contract. Yeah. That was a terrible, terrible feeling. Yeah. Like everything's going down the tubes. Yep. Then there were also some things that went really well. Yeah. And we had a really, really good fourth quarter.
I think that's a very important thing, not to get too philosophical here, but a lot of people probably think that growth and success is just in a straight linear path. And, out of transparency for Digital Wildcatters, I mean, we had an awesome year last year. We 3x revenue. But guess what? We had 2 near-death experiences from cash flow crunches that almost killed the business. Yeah. And so, you have those highs and you have those lows, and things could be running on all cylinders. But
and the highs you imagine aren't really the ones that ever happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you feel like you're chasing after this euphoria of, I don't even know what it is, like an exit or something. Yeah. But I guarantee you'll be happy for 20 minutes with an exit.
No, that's
not what it's actually. That shouldn't be the goal.
It's funny. I was listening to this podcast. I don't know if you know Morning Brew or not. The newsletter, but they sold to Business Insider for $75 million a couple of years ago, and I was just listening to this podcast a few weeks ago with the founder, and he's like, it was the most anticlimactic thing ever selling our business. He's like, we're on a Zoom call, and they're like, hey, we're wiring over the money, and he's like, me and my co-founder Austin are sitting in the living room, and they wired over the money, and it hits, and it was just, that was it. He's like, it's like the most anticlimactic thing.
That's
ever.
not the thing. So, I need to like absorb this, because I still tend to imagine being able to do an exit or being able to grow. We have this aspiration of, I'll talk about this more in a little bit if there's time, like an aspiration of doing this regulatory stuff in other verticals as well outside of energy, because it can help anybody anywhere. But that's a good word for me that I need to kind of absorb. Yeah. I will tell you the moments that have actually, the ones that I wish I could live for more, or the ones that have actually been the most meaningful, have been about cultivating others. Mm-hmm. One of these things happened yesterday. We had an event in Austin, and some of us couldn't make it, and some of us were late because of Delta. Yeah. And so a couple of my team members had to do a demo without having planned on it. And and I watched them doing it. They were fantastic. Yeah. And they did it with a different flavor that I wouldn't have come up with. Yeah. And they were, and the audience was spellbound. Love it. And I realized that being able to cultivate a team in this way, it is the most satisfying thing. It's more satisfying than when that $3 million seed round came in. Yeah. I used to be one that thought a lot about valuations and exits and spent a lot of time in my calculator, because I am a capitalist. I like making money. But I think when I had my transformation as a real founder and a leader was when I stopped thinking about that stuff and really focused on our mission and cultivating people within our organization. And so it's fucking awesome when I see them win and see them overcome challenges and adversity. And so for me personally, I just enjoy the journey. Like I enjoy getting to wake up every day and do something that I like doing, and building a company and an impactful platform. And so I know if you build something special, economic returns will take care of itself in the future. So I do worry what happens if you build something special and the economic returns don't take care of themselves. That happens.
That happens every once in a while. But I think if you grow a business sustainably, this could get to like a whole bigger macro level of how startups have been building over the last few years, raising mega rounds, chasing growth at all costs. Mm-hmm. And the problem when you chase growth at all costs and raise, VC round after VC round is that you hit a valuation where, you get past $100 million in valuation, your pool of potential acquirers shrinks pretty significantly. And so you get to $1 billion plus. I mean, there's very few companies out there that can actually acquire you. And so, if you're building a company, I think the sweet spot for if you want to get acquired is 30 to $100 million. If not, you better have a path to sustainable free cash flow to where you can actually pay out over time.
Yes.
Because, if you're just chasing growth and raising capital to do that, you may hit a point of there is no liquidity for you. So I don't want to get like too high on the on the soapbox on that one, but yeah, those things can happen. So, for this show, obviously we have a ton of people in midstream, and probably quite a bit of them that are in regulatory and accounting. If they want to find HData, where can they find you guys at on the internet?
They'll find us at hdata.us. They'll find us at Digital Wildcatters conferences.
There
And
you
they'll
go.
probably find us at the wonky conferences that they go to. If they go to the Liquid Energy Pipeline Association, for instance, they will find us doing karaoke.
There you go. I love it. So, guys, we'll leave a link to the website in the show notes. You can be sure to check them out there. And like Hunter said, spoke at Fuse, so you can check them out at Digital Wildcatters conference in the future, I'm sure. Dude, I appreciate you coming on the show and schooling us up on this. This has been very interesting.
Colin, thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me. I'm really grateful to Digital Wildcatters.
Thank you, man. If y'all like this show, please share it with a friend. Share it with all of your regulatory nerds and pipeline accountants out there. Make sure to leave us 5-star reviews if you're listening on Spotify and Apple. We will catch you on the next episode.